Hello, everybody. My name is Lore, or Lore Builds, or Daguerre, depending on how you know me. I am a cosplayer based out of Central Illinois. Um, I have put off making this video for quite some time, but with convention season approaching, I decided that ultimately this was something that I needed to share with the community. So I hope you can forgive me reading from a script. There's a lot of information to go over, so let's just get into it. I am making this video to talk about my experience with Jacob Avorio, or FauxMetalAlchemist as he is known on Instagram. He is a cosplayer originally based out of Chicago, and I'm not actually entirely sure where he's at these days. But with C2E2 approaching, there's a good chance that we will see him again, and so I wanted to talk about this. I met Jacob Avorio in the Discord server of a cosplay friend. My partner at the time recognized him from past Belagarth events where he was formerly known as Crocky or something like that. We didn't talk much until meeting in person at C2E2. We got to know each other a bit more in the lobby Saturday night through some mutual friends, or on Friday night, as well as on Saturday night, and then again on Sunday when we helped one of our mutual friends tear down their booth. I didn't think much of it, but knowing that he had a Belagarth background, I invited him to an event in Indiana 2 weeks later. He showed up on the Saturday of that event and everything seemed fine. There had been a few casual messages between us during those few weeks, but nothing particularly exciting, just planning and event details. The day went by, but as the evening festivities went on, we both decided to imbibe, as is customary at these events. We both took edibles, and alcohol was being passed around. I don't really drink a whole lot, but ultimately people were, ingesting these substances, and Jacob began to flirt with me very aggressively. He was sitting behind me, and he would talk in my ear or whisper or like rub my shoulders or just say different things to me. And at this time, I was okay with this behavior. Admittedly, I was potentially interested in where this could lead, but after we realized that a good amount of time had passed since he had gone to the bathroom and his buddy had disappeared, the night quickly turned into me and my companions getting him cleaned up, carried back to his car, and mopping the bathroom floor. He came to apologize the next morning in a show of good faith, and we all went out to breakfast together, joking with him that everybody gets one. The group chat for planning that breakfast stayed active, mostly with Avorio talking about how much he liked our friend group and how we should start a unit, which is like a social club in Belagarth. We all loved his enthusiasm, but his behavior began to set up a few red flags for me. Between that, talks of offering to help me purchase an updated camera, seeing as I was out of work, and driving 3 hours one way to our weekly Belagarth practices, it all began to make me uncomfortable with the amount of attention I received. While I reciprocated the feelings for a few weeks initially, I began to downplay those comments until ultimately telling him that I did not want to pursue anything romantic or sexual at this time. Due to just like some other stuff going on in my life. This was something that had to be repeated fairly often as he continued to flirt. Additionally, during this time, I texted 3 male cosplayers who are well known in the Chicago craftsmanship community and asked them to provide some insight into his character. And they all gave me some version of, well, I've never partied with him, but he always seems kind and he always seems safe. I'm sure it was just a mistake. Given that these are men who present themselves as pillars of the regional craftsmanship community, and they had always struck me as such, I believed them and I let it go. Avorio and I were both invited to attend the birthday party of one of the members of the cosplay Discord server. I drove the first leg of the trip from where I'm located up to Chicago, where I carpooled with him the rest of the way up to where they live. Even on that drive, at least twice, I told him that I did not want to have sex with him. Upon arrival, I found that he had arranged for us to share a bed in the only other private room in the apartment. Now, the events that followed this point might not make much sense to people who haven't been manipulated, coerced, or suffered mental abuse. Additionally, the cosplayers in this group have industry connections that, as a then unemployed freelancer in talks of several projects with them, I didn't want to rock the boat and lose that potential income. So I decided to try to go along with the plan. It's not like this guy is a rapist, right? I knew this, what sort of physical contact I was and wasn't okay with. And in hindsight, I obviously should have said something. I should have just said absolutely not. But that's the kind of clarity that only comes with time and hindsight. The first night passed without incident, but on the second night, we ended up in a situation where we were kissing, and after an amount of time, he continued to push the line where I was comfortable with. I can't remember with certainty if I had had anything to drink, but I can almost assure that I was some amount of high from either smoking or an edible, and between that and all of the variables that I had previously explained, I was pretty overwhelmed as I realized he was about to go down on me. I said his name multiple times to try to get his attention, to redirect him, because once again, the amount of panic and surprise and confusion I was feeling had me in more of a freeze or fawn state than fight or flight. He ignored me trying to get his attention until he tried to put me in a different position, and that's when I snapped back into my head and ultimately pushed him off of me. I rolled over and tried to go to bed and figured I'd deal with it in the morning. The next day, I played a lot of Tetris while trying to process what had happened and how I felt about the situation. We left the party, and he dropped me off at my car in Chicago, and he asked again if he could kiss me. I didn't want to, but at this point, I just wanted to get away from the situation as quickly as possible. So yes, I kissed him, and I left before having an absolute meltdown in my car before driving home. The 3-hour drive gave me a lot of time to think, and despite all of the times I knew I had said out loud or in our text that I did not want to have sex with him, I wasn't comfortable with anything that had happened. However, given that the real-time processing of my feelings had some potential ambiguity around them, I decided to explain my side and initiated a conversation rather than an accusation. I texted him the next day that from my perspective, it felt like he had taken advantage of the situation and had ignored my efforts to stop things from happening. Now, maybe it's just me, but if I got that text, I feel like my immediate response would be, oh my God, I'm so sorry. What can I do to make you feel better? Because I care more about that person, let alone just not wanting to feel like a rapist in my own right. I would want to do everything in that power to make good, right? But that's not what happened. And that's how I knew exactly that I was right about what had happened. Like I previously said, I'm polyamorous and I had 3 partners that knew Avorio. 2 of them appear male by society standards, while 1 of them appears female. What was super interesting to me was that he texted the boys and not the girl. Instead of seeking clarity, he doubled down, trying to get them to tell me that I was out of line and needed to talk sense into me. In our conversations, there was no remorse, just him telling me what did happen. I came to the conversation with completely open hands because even at this point, I wanted to believe he wasn't a bad guy. But ultimately, I think I was just in denial that he had sexually assaulted me. I made it so easy for him to say, I'm sorry, it was a miscommunication, even if it wasn't. But the way he doubled down told me everything I needed to know, that this had been intentional and not a miscommunication at all. I reached out to the men who had originally vouched for him. My message was meant to say, hey guys, this person isn't safe, and since you are all respectable folks, I wanted you to know that so you didn't actually accidentally align yourself with him moving forward, but I'm sure you can already imagine where this is going. There were a few performative talks of removing him from the Discord and distancing themselves from him, but when it didn't happen at all in a month or so, I ultimately left the Discord. Many of the group members blocked me on social media, as I can only assume his version of events spread. But for the ones that reached out to me, I told them the truth, and they were outraged. One of the men who vouched for him, the most well-connected industry professional out of all of them, still talks to me like nothing ever happened, and it is equal parts terrifying and heartbreakingly disappointing. When I got to Fan Expo, these men walked away from conversations that I was having with our mutual friends, and I knew I was being ostracized and that any attempt at a career in cosplay was probably over, at least when it came to the connections that I had originally been trying to protect. The more I talked about it, I found that I was not the only person who had become intimately acquainted with Avorio's inability to respect consent. And that was very disappointing. It was incredibly disappointing. That's really all I can say about that because it's not my business, but someone reached out to me and let me know that I wasn't the only one. I'm not really expecting anything to happen from this. I'm not looking for a smear campaign, and I'm not looking for a witch hunt on who his friends are. But I am saying that Jacob Avorio, or FauxMetalAlchemist, is not a safe person at all. and then the men closest to him, regardless of how sweet they are and how much they post about being good men, will protect him, lie to you about it, and then show up several months later at Dragon Con with him like nothing happened. And since I can't be at C2E2 this year to tell people in person, I wanted to let people know so that they can be safe. I don't really know how to end this, but I do know that I'm fucking tired of men getting a pass for repugnant and inexcusable behavior just because they build cool Dark Souls cosplays. Hell, there have been men in cosplay at C2E2 this year who I told about this, who empathized with me, only to change their tune after seeing his armor online, and I wish I was kidding. I still hope I'm wrong about that one in particular, after being told that I misunderstood the facts, after having the same conversation with myself, and after being proven wrong. No, I'm done with Avorio and any man who tries to vouch for him or protect him. Cosplay doesn't have an overarching body to protect the community, so the burden falls upon us to protect each other. And I'm not going to shut up about this. We need to keep each other safe, especially as women or people perceived as women within our community of men who, as it turns out, are just as fake as their foam armor. So with all that, I hope everyone has an amazing C2E2. I'm so sad I can't be there. And I hope I get to see you all next year. Stay safe, have a good time, take care of each other.